It's a classic Hollywood story. A young man gets a big break and sudden fame, but then he turns to hard drugs and gets into trouble. While it's a common story, few of those stories end like this one, with murder. The actor accused of murder is Lillo Brancato. Tonight, for the first time since he went on trial, he talks to Chris Connolly about the crime.
Back in 1993, as his young face lit up the screen in A Bronx Tale, 16-year-old Lillo Brancato looked to all the world like a teenager on the brink of showbiz greatness, an overnight sensation with electrifying ability.
Don't lie to me!
I swear, I just went right to the school and that was it. I swear to God, why would I want to hurt you? You've been like a father to me.
The sky was the limit.
Really?
Robert Downey, Leonardo DiCaprio, absolutely. I say that unequivocally. And I wouldn't say that about someone who didn't have the talent.
He was plucked from obscurity to work with actor-director Robert De Niro and A Bronx Tale's writer and star Chaz Palminteri.
Don't you trust anybody?
No.
It's a horrible way to live.
I remember it so clear. As we were shooting, I remember I said, I hope we're not cursing this kid.
Back then, Lillo Brancato was given a once-in-a-generation opportunity in the movie business, handed the keys to the Hollywood kingdom. But 16 years later, in this place, no one is handing Lillo Brancato the keys to anything. An opportunity of any kind is nowhere to be found. All because of one night on this snowy driveway in the Bronx, where in a burst of gunfire, more than one man's dream would be shattered forever. It all started with a day at the beach.
July 5th at Jones Beach.
1992.
You still remember the year, you still remember the date?
Absolutely.
Lillo loved to do impressions for his brother Vinny, so when a Bronx Tale casting assistant came by, handing out audition flyers, Vinny spoke up.
Well, I was like, Lee, do Joe Pesci for him. Lee, do, De Niro for him.
Talking to me?
And he did it, and the guy was like, wow. He goes, you got to come down to the Bronx tonight.
Can I ask you something? Yeah.
Lillo took A Bronx Tale's production team by storm, and he got the part.
It was unbelievable. I mean, he had natural ability. It was just amazing. I said, what happened to you is more rare than winning the lotto. Do you understand that?
Some guys never get that shot, you know that.
I know that. I just got everything so easy. It just came so easily for me.
So easily, he seemed to take it for granted, smoking dope before acting in this scene.
Is it better to be loved or feared?
That's a good question.
What was going on with you personally during that scene?
That was the first time that I ever got high, and it was captured on film.
And what's going on in your head at that moment?
What do I look like right now? Does anybody know? Does anybody know I'm high?
Did you know that at the time?
To be quite honest with you, I had a suspicion that he was. He could be such a good kid, and then the next minute, be so irresponsible. It was so strange.
Before the film opened, Robert De Niro came to Lillo's home to caution him.
He mentioned, the drugs.
He did mention drugs.
Yeah. Well, he said a lot of people are going to want to be your friends, and they don't have your best interest at heart. So you got to be careful, and you got to choose your friends wisely.
You probably couldn't hear a word he told you.
I kind of shrugged it off. It was kind of like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but not me. I'll be fine, Bob. Recommend Alert 1.
Fame and success did follow. Lillo got roles in Crimson Tide and Penny Marshall's Renaissance Man.
Hey, Larry, who's an animal, Larry, huh? Your mother's an animal.
And got VIP treatment at every club in town.
Let's face it, it feels great. I mean, it does feel great, but after a while, I guess it gets to your head. It definitely gets to your head.
Yeah, not fame itself, but it was people that changed my brother. Free drugs, free booze, free women.
In 1999, for The Sopranos' second season, Lillo played a good-looking hothead with a violent streak.
Get back in your office.
As Lillo's own cocaine use began to intensify.
Were you high when you did The Sopranos?
I may have been, yes. I may have been, yes.
Even as his partying continued, Lillo never even moved out of his parents' house in Yonkers.
Why didn't he leave? I guess he just had it good, you know? Dinner, whatever you needed, you know?
This kid had so much natural ability, but did nothing with it. Never went to acting school, never took things seriously, never really read scripts, didn't do anything.
Instead, Lillo did hard drugs full time.
Instead of having 2 drinks, you'll have 4. And then from the 4 drinks, then you'll sniffle, you know, you'll snort a line of cocaine. And then from that line of cocaine to come down, you'll do some heroin. And then it doesn't end. The drugs always win.
His family staged an intervention, got Lillo into rehab, but nothing took. His brother Vinny felt he knew the family secret that had driven his brother to drugs. Lillo had been adopted from an orphanage in Bogota, Colombia.
You know, he'd be going to my mom's room at 3 o'clock in the morning and talking about that, you know, and being upset about him being adopted. It always bothered him. I think that was his downfall.
Late in 2005, everyone saw that Lillo's need for drugs was out of control.
I said, "You're fooling around with heroin." And he goes, "No, no, no, no." And I said, "Listen to me now. If you don't stop this, and I've been telling you this for years, something bad's gonna happen to you."
By December, I was a lost cause. I was getting worse every day.
Look at you. You lost like 50 pounds. You're a mess.
Did you think to yourself, this is going to end really badly?
I thought he was going to die.
But Lillo Brancato didn't die. Somebody else did. When we come back, Lillo hits bottom as an all-night drug binge leads to gunfire, murder charges, inside a shocking night, and a stunning jury verdict. Next. New York City's most somber public event, the funeral of a police officer, with his brethren in attendance and words from Mayor Bloomberg.
The entire city took his tragic loss deeply and personally.
In the fall of 2008, scores of police officers would also be in attendance at the trial of one of the men accused of murdering Daniel Enshautegi, Lillo Brancato, one-time movie star of A Bronx Tale. Each day at trial, they would applaud for Yolanda Rosa, sister to Officer Enshautegi.
They called him a cop's cop.
Mm-hmm. He loved it. He loved taking those bad guys off the street.
The trial was a tabloid sensation, starring a Hollywood hotshot transformed into a desperate junkie. Hired to defend Lillo, high-profile New York attorney Joe Tacopina saw this as a case of wrong place, wrong time.
Lillo was someone who understood that it was his addiction that put him in the particular place that he was at that night. But he also told a story that caused me to believe he had no legal or moral involvement in the murder of a New York City police officer.
On a binge at the down and dirty Crazy Horse strip club in the Bronx with Stephen Armento, the father of an ex-girlfriend, Lillo Brancato spent the early morning hours of December 10, 2005. By 4 a.m., the men were out of drugs and had to have more.
The crack cocaine was eating the heroin to the point where I was dope sick. Like I felt every ache and pain, hot flashes, cold sweats, started like shaking. I needed a fix.
To get that fix, they went to the apartment of another Lillo pal, Kenny Scavati, who'd supplied pills to Lillo in the past. Lillo broke Kenny's window, and that awakened the officer who lived next door. He may have been off duty, but he was still a cop, so he headed outside to check, calling 911 as he did so.
I'm an off-duty MOS. I think somebody broke into my neighbor's home. There's glass and the windows on the floor.
It would be the last phone call of his life. Seconds later, as the 28-year-old officer came upon Lillo Brancato and Stephen Armento, shots rang out.
I remember walking, and I remember hearing someone say, "Don't move." And I was startled, so I turned around quickly, and I was shot. I was shot twice. And then I just left.
Westchester and Arno got a pickup of shots fired.
Wounded in the chest, Lillo staggered down the driveway and into the street near his car, where he was met by police on the scene. Stephen Armento was still holding his gun when he collapsed, all while police tried to save the life of Officer Enchautegi.
1 minute out for EMS, 1 minute out.
When did you find out that this hunt for drugs had killed a man?
Someone came to the hospital bed with the newspaper, and he said, hey, buddy, you proud of yourself? He said, you and your boy just killed a cop. I said, what?
A police officer.
Not long after Officer Enchautegi was pronounced dead at Jacobi Hospital, cut down by bullets from Stephen Armento's gun, patrolmen were waiting at Yolanda Rose's front door.
And I said, the first reaction was, please don't tell me something happened to my brother. And he just said, ma'am, come with me, put your shoes on, I need you to come with me.
For his involvement in Officer Enchautegi's death, Lillo's pal Stephen Armento would be sentenced to life in prison without parole. The charges against Lillo were attempted burglary and felony murder.
That's what the state alleged here, that during a burglary attempt, a police officer was killed, and that Lillo was just as responsible as Stephen Armento, the shooter, for that crime.
Did you know that Stephen Armento had a gun?
No, I did not.
How could you not know he had a gun?
I just didn't. I was never a gun guy. I was never into that kind of stuff.
No one's saying you had it, but how could you not know that he had it?
He knew that it's something that I would be against, and I wouldn't allow it in my car. Absolutely
You would
not.
have said, oh, I don't mind scoring all these drugs and stuff and going to places, but if you've got a gun, you can't get in my car.
Yeah, there's a big difference. You know, it's like already we have drugs in the car.
People think you knew he had a gun.
Of course people think that.
He may be a junkie, but he's not a dummy. He knew what was going on that night. Whether he pulled the trigger or not, he committed that murder along with his buddy.
Officer Courtney Mapp was just one of the witnesses whose testimony at trial filled the New York papers before the jury decided to write a surprise ending to this very different Bronx tale.
Verdict in the murder trial.
On the charge of attempted burglary, Lillo Brancato was found guilty. On the charge of felony murder, Lillo was acquitted.
It was a slap in my face. It was a slap in my face.
If I could speak to Danny, I would have told Danny, do not get out of bed.
My brother could have stood sleeping. He didn't have to get up. But my brother heard it. He heard breaking glass, 5 in the morning. He got up.
Before his sentencing, Lillo Brancato read a message of remorse.
You said in that statement, I'm a good person.
Right.
How are you going to prove that to us?
Police officer died. And I will always, always make sure that he's remembered for being a hero.
I just want him to do the right thing. To me, it's more important right now just he stays clean, you know? And if you don't, I'm done with him.
He was sentenced to 10 years, so with credit for time served, Lillo Brancato will be spending at least 5 more years behind bars.
I'm ashamed. I mean, I had the opportunities and I squandered them all away. I squandered it, you know.
What's the last line of A Bronx Tale?
The saddest thing in life is wasted talent.
That's your story, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even now, at Officer Enchautegi's precinct, his locker has been turned into a shrine to honor his sacrifice. And from the man who created A Bronx Tale, there is deep sympathy for Officer Enchautegi's family. For Lillo Brancato, there is only anger.
He said those words in the movie. I wrote those words. The saddest thing in life is wasted talent, and the choices you make will shape your life forever. I mean, what else do you want to hear? What else do you want to know? How could you do this? How?
And when we come back, you won't believe what happened after Diane Sawyer's story last week about the children of Appalachia. That's next.